Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this live presentation. And I'm really excited to bring to you Deb Dana. And I'm Deborah Wilson, and most of you know me. I'm the founder of School Moves. And the whole idea behind these Think Different webinars is that we can do our work a little bit easier and with support. And I'm bringing in support from the therapy field today, from not the OT-PT therapy field, but the social working field. One of the action items that I was writing down, I was going through your book, was the show and tell. And maybe this would be a place where we could bring that in for those on the call. That I really love the idea of the show and tell. Can you explain that a little bit as we're talking about those three states?
So oftentimes it's hard to put language to our states, but we can find objects that represent those states. And I live near the ocean, so I'm forever using beach stones, and I take beach stones whenever I go to teach. I take bags of beach stones with me so that people can choose the stones that represent their three states. But for families, and if anybody has sand tray objects, or even if you just have little kids' toys around, or objects that are meaningful, if you can choose an object that for you represents each of your three states, and then share that with another person and tell them why this represents that state for you, it's really a sweet way of connecting. And I was thinking earlier, when I was thinking about how to launch this in schools, that kids could have their objects, and they could put the object on their desk that represents what state they're in. It could be a sign for the people around them or for the teacher. And we want to remember that if this isn't just about the teacher or about the mom or the dad, the parents in the family, this is everybody working together to create a community of autonomically informed people. We can identify what are the cues of safety and what are the cues of danger. And both are important to identify, because we know that we have to reduce cues of danger, but then we have to actively bring in cues of safety to regulate a nervous system. It's not a one or the other, it's both and. Let's think for a minute about the concrete cues that schools are doing with locked doors and alarms and school safety officers and all that. And we think that those are cues of safety to a nervous system, but oftentimes they're not. Oftentimes they're experienced as cues of danger. So even in the concrete way a school is being set up, we have cues of danger, right? We want to be looking for cues of safety there. Can we meet kids at the door with a smile and a handshake, or a pat on the back or a hug, right? Let them know you are welcome, because what we're doing is we're trying to welcome their nervous system in, right? Their nervous system is going to set the tone for the day for that child. We're often asking kids to do something that biologically they are not yet able to do, and say, wow, their nervous system just can't bring that right now, right? It's not they don't want to, but biologically they can't right now. And so how can we create some cues of safety in classrooms so that kids, when they need to move, can? And so that they can be strong.
Yeah, so bringing that back to School Moves and what we talk about in our workshops. So some cues of safety might be the wall push-ups, where they have the handprints on the wall and they're allowed to get up and go do heavy work when they're feeling that in the system. Right. So it gives them, right. So you have it set up, or our focus finder desk strip, where you can point, they can stand up and do some cross crawls. Like, they have that permission throughout the day. And I think the key for us teachers, as we're trying to manage this group, is to have a plan. And I love the idea of calling these cues of safety. I mean, I've never thought in terms of, we always just say it's integrative movement or it's whatever, but that's actually what we're doing. We're giving them cues of safety that, yeah.
You're sending signals of safety. And then as the nervous system takes those in and comes into regulation, the child's story becomes one of being able to engage and do the learning.
Those of you who don't have the book, it needs to be on your desk, because she has all these really cool activities to do. So one of them is to say, like, where are you? You have a ladder. You use a ladder. You're at the top. Is, you know, the ventral, and then sympathetic, and then dorsal. So where are you in that ladder? And then you have this little quadrant box you do that says, well, what gets you into those states and what gets you out of them? And you call them triggers and glimmers.
We identify triggers pretty well. You know, we're always looking for what's wrong, right? But it's the glimmers that are really important to look for. Those glimmers are those micro moments of a regulated nervous system, and it's all we need are micro moments. We do not need a sustained, all day long ventral vagal experience for us or for kids to learn. We need micro moments, and we need the micro moments to keep building and building and building, because it's unrealistic to think that any of us can stay in ventral vagal all the time. It's unrealistic. We don't. We go down and up the autonomic ladder. We move in and out of states all the time. And the well-being can be thought of, or resilience can be thought of, as a flexible nervous system. It's not a nervous system that's always ventral, but it's a nervous system that knows how to dysregulate and come back into regulation. And what happens for many kids, what happens for adults with unresolved trauma histories, is the nervous system, rather than being flexible, is a rigid system. So we get dysregulated and we get stuck there, right? We can't find our way back.
Another thing you talked about in your book was just like sort of mirroring other, like, tell me a little bit about mirroring. How does that work? Like, how can we use that as teachers and therapists and working with students?
Mirroring is fascinating, because the mirroring of we sort of, our autonomic nervous system sort of automatically mirrors others. You know, we feel pulled in. We'll often, you know, I'll do this and you'll do that, and we lean, and you know, it's just what we do. But the dance movement therapy world has brought us into research around movement and mirroring, so that if I mirror your movements, I get to feel what's happening inside your body, and I have more empathy and compassion for what's going on with you. So it's a great way to sort of get a sense of another person's struggles, right? So my nervous system can connect with yours through mirroring your movement, and then I get to feel what that feels like, and then we could talk about it afterwards, right? But I would be coming from a very different place, because my nervous system would have been with you in that. So if a kid is, you know, having, you know, too much energy and needs to get some out, and, you know, I might invite that child to, okay, so do a movement, and then let me mirror it with you, right? And then I can see what that feels like inside that child's body. And, you know, he will have some fun watching me mirror him as well. So.
We actually have an activity called Mirror Me Moves that we do.
Beautiful.
And so like, so much of your book, as I was reading it, I put notes and I said, oh my gosh, that's Mirror Me Moves. Or, oh my gosh, you know, it showed me kind of the deeper work that's happening when we're doing what seems like, oh, well, this is just a simple little activity. And even just music, you have that as another thing of just singing together. You know, we're taking music out of schools, and so bringing some music back and doing some movement and with that music.
We're talking about, you know, how we do this. We expect kids to self-regulate, right? And what we know is that we come into the world with a need to co-regulate. Co-regulation is a missing experience. Feeling safely connected and able to co-regulate with another person predictably, continually, is a missing experience. And so then self-regulating skills are not so effective, You know, we teach kids to self-regulate by overriding something, right? Instead of saying, let's co-regulate, let's do this together. And when you've learned enough that there is somebody here to co-regulate, your system is going to know how to self-regulate, right? So we skip that piece. We skip the co-regulating piece that is so incredibly important for nervous
Well, because
systems,
we're all
right?
about children managing their own behaviors. We're all about they need to be doing it on their own. I'm guilty as charged with we want children to manage their own behaviors. And I like that idea of finding another student in the class who is regulated. I love the idea of connecting. I hadn't thought about that. Like, instead of doing it alone, we're wanting them to self-regulate. Oh, well, you know that you can go get up and do the wall push-up, but actually having somebody to come next to them and just kind of hold that space for them of what they're feeling.
You know, you have the wall push-ups. You have the hands on the wall for the wall push-ups. You know, through a polyvagal perspective, you would have two next to each other so that people would be doing it together, right? It's co-regulating, right? Everything, you know, is if because our system's going to regulate together, right? It's all about connection. Really, the human system, we human beings need human connection. And I want to say social support, which we all need as well, is not necessarily social connection. They're different experiences. And so we can be creating lots of social support for our kids in school, but we can be missing the social connection, right? So social support are the concrete things that kids need, but social connection is this biological. It is a biological imperative to feel safely connected to another person, right?
Wow, I have to sit with that one. That was pretty huge for me, because I'm, you know, when I'm teaching, I'm picturing everybody's happy because these kids are all doing it on their own. So Vera says, I do wall push-ups with my students and find that they will get in sync together, that we get in sync together. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. So what you're doing is offering your nervous system, you know, as a connection to another nervous system. Really, when you think about, you know, polyvagal, you're thinking, you know, the guiding question for me as a therapist, and, you know, if we can bring it into schools and parenting, is what does that nervous system need in this moment to feel safe enough to engage?
Always bringing it back to safety to engage socially.
It's always about safety.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. I use things like this, like Mickey, because he has big feet and he has big hands and he has big ears. So we do this thing where they do dots and squeezies. So I can show him how to do it and how to do listening ears.
Have Mickey show us what a dorsal vagal state feels like to him. Right. Yeah. And then a sympathetic state. Yeah, right.
And then throw this across
ventral.
Yeah,
right. And then come back to ventral. Exactly. Yeah. So even doing those things with kids as they're manipulating a stuffed animal, I use the wooden mannequins that you can get in craft stores. That's what I use, the bendable ones. You know, at the end of the day, you just reflect and think, what, you know, can you find 3 glimmers today? And it might be as simple as, you know, I went out and I felt the sun on my face. And that's what we're looking for. So, you know, in a classroom or with kids, you might make that a, you know, a weekly, you know, invitation to find, you know, a glimmer a day.
I love that.
You know, whatever. Because we're really trying to build the capacity to see the glimmers. And the thing is that there are lots of glimmers in our day that we miss because, first of all, we're not looking for them. And second of all, if we're in a dysregulated state, it's really hard to see them. So to build a practice of looking for glimmers, and it's interesting because some of the research around creating more flexibility in the nervous system, building more what we call vagal tone, says that these practices that we do small and often actually begin to change the set point in the nervous system. So there is research to say this is good to do. It can change the platform that the nervous system is starting from. So again, that takes us to my favorite word yet, right? So I can't find glimmers yet, right? I can't speak polyvagal yet. Yet is one of those words that if you just put it at the end of any sentence, leads you into that hopeful place of movement.
Thank you for your great work. If you haven't gotten Deb's book, I'm going to again, and I'm going to show you all my book. And she has a lot of really practical charts in the back, that she has a lot of tools that I like, that I thought I could see them. And I have little notes that's saying, like with this one, I'm like, oh, I could modify that for the classroom. I could see where, so there were a lot of things that I kept thinking about, how would I use that in the classroom? And you have all the words, but then you also have the real practical piece in the back. And I think if they get the book too, there's a link at your website to downloadables as well.
Yes. Yeah, all the PDF, all the map PDFs are on my website. So yeah, and I hope people will modify and go out there and bring it in, and then let me know. Email me and let me know what you're doing, because I love.
Yeah, what's your email for them? I probably should put this in the chat box. Deb, where do they find you?
It's Deborah, DeborahA Dana LCSW
at Gmail. All right, I'm going to put that in there so that if anybody wants to. Is that it? Did I get it right?
Please.
Well, your website, though. What's your website?
So rhythmofregulation.com.
Rhythmofregulation.com, which I love that name too. It's so cool. Rhythmofregulation.com.